The man who bought everything, Damien Cross, stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his 42nd floor office, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a circuit board. At 32, he commanded a tech empire worth $12 billion. Yet the view felt as cold as the titanium desk behind him. "Sir, the morning briefing is ready," his assistant announced through the intercom. The boardroom filled with nervous energy as Damien entered. 12 executives, each earning more in a year than most people saw in a lifetime, straightened in their chairs. These weren't colleagues, they were investments that happened to breathe. Revenue projections for the third quarter show a 15% increase, began Marcus, his CFO. However, we're seeing productivity dips in 3 departments. Damien's steel-gray eyes sharpened. Define dips. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Employee satisfaction surveys indicate workplace stress. Some staff are requesting mental health support, citing relationship issues affecting work performance. A bitter laugh escaped Damien's lips. Relationship issues. He turned to the room. Ladies and gentlemen, this is precisely why I maintain a strict policy against emotional entanglements. Love, if we're calling it, that is a distraction, a chemical reaction that clouds judgment and destroys focus. The room remained silent. Everyone knew Damien's history. His parents' messy divorce had splashed across tabloids when he was 16. His college girlfriend had sold intimate details to gossip magazines. Every relationship since had been calculated, temporary, and shallow. Cancel the mental health initiative, Damien continued. Instead, implement performance bonuses tied to productivity metrics. Money motivates. Everything else is fairy tale nonsense. After the meeting, Damien returned to his penthouse apartment. The space was architectural perfection: glass, steel, and marble arranged with mathematical precision. No photographs, no personal touches, nothing that suggested a human lived there. He poured himself a glass of $20,000 whiskey and opened his laptop. Dating apps flickered across the screen, not for romance, but for carefully orchestrated encounters with women who understood the arrangement. Dinner, conversation, mutual satisfaction, goodbye, clean, simple, safe. His phone buzzed with a text. From Victoria, a model he'd been seeing occasionally. "Missing you? When can we get together?" Damien deleted the message without responding. Victoria was getting too comfortable, using words like missing and asking about feelings. Time to move. On, he scrolled through his contacts, each name representing someone who wanted something from him. Business deals, charity galas, social climbing, everyone had an angle. That's how the world worked. People were transactions, and Damien had mastered the art of getting the better deal. Outside his window, the city lights twinkled like stars, each one representing dreams, hopes, and the messy human emotions he'd learned to avoid. Damien had built his fortune by understanding patterns, predicting behaviors, and exploiting weaknesses. Love, he'd concluded long ago, was the greatest weakness of all. He closed the laptop and headed to his bedroom, another perfectly curated space, devoid of warmth. Tomorrow would bring new deals, new acquisitions, new victories in his endless quest to prove that everything and everyone had a price. What Damien didn't know was that some things couldn't be bought, and some people couldn't be sold. He was about to meet someone who would challenge everything he believed about human nature, starting with a storm that would ground his private jet in a small town where money meant less than kindness. But tonight, he slept alone in his fortress of glass and steel, convinced he had won the game of life by refusing to play the game of love. The unexpected detour the storm hit without warning, turning the sky into a canvas of angry clouds and lightning. Damien gripped the leather armrest of his private jet as turbulence shook the cabin like a child's toy. "Sir, we need to make an emergency landing," Captain Rodriguez announced over the intercom. "There's a small airfield in Millbrook, about 30 miles from our destination. Weather service says the storm system could last hours." Damien checked his Patek Philippe watch. He was supposed to close a major acquisition deal in 2 hours. "How long until we can take off again?" "At least 4 hours, sir. Maybe more." The landing was rough. The small airfield, a stark contrast to the private terminals Damien was accustomed to. As his driver helped retrieve luggage from the jet, rain began pelting down in sheets. "Find me somewhere to wait this out," Damien ordered, pulling his Italian wool coat tighter. "A hotel, restaurant, anywhere with decent Wi-Fi." The driver returned 10 minutes later, shaking his head. "Sir, the main road's flooded. Hotel's full with stranded travelers. But there's a community center about 2 blocks away that's opened. As a shelter, a community center." Damien had never set foot in such a place, but the alternative was sitting in a cramped airport office. He grabbed his laptop bag and followed the driver through the downpour. The Millbrook Community Center was nothing like the sleek spaces Damien inhabited. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows on worn linoleum floors. Tables were scattered throughout the main room. It's occupied by families, elderly residents, and travelers like himself who'd been caught by the storm. "Welcome," a warm voice called out. "Rough day to be traveling?" Damien turned to see a woman approaching, with a steaming cup of coffee. She was maybe 28, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to see right through his expensive facade. Her clothes were simple jeans and a faded t-shirt from a local 5K run, but she moved with quiet confidence. "I'm Luna Martinez," she said, extending the coffee. "I coordinate programs here. You look like you could use this." Damien accepted the cup, surprised by the gesture. In his world, people brought him things because they wanted something in return. "Damien," he replied, leaving off his last name out of instinct. "First time in Millbrook?" Luna asked, not waiting for an answer. "It's not much to look at, but we're good people. Storm should pass by evening." She gestured to an empty table near the window. "Make yourself comfortable. There's sandwiches and soup if you get hungry." "No charge," Mrs. Chen from the diner donated. Everything when she heard about folks getting stranded. As Luna walked away to help other visitors, Damien found himself watching her. She moved from table to table, checking on an elderly man's medication, helping a young mother calm her crying toddler, and organizing a card game for restless teenagers. No one paid her, yet she treated each person with genuine care. Damien opened his laptop, trying to focus on emails, but found his attention drifting. A group of teenagers had gathered around Luna as she helped with homework. Their laughter filled the space with warmth that no amount of money could buy. "You're not from around here?" said a voice beside him. An older man with calloused hands and kind eyes had sat down nearby. "Name's Frank. Retired mechanic." "Just passing through," Damien replied, expecting Frank to ask about his business or try to sell him something. Instead, Frank nodded toward Luna. "That girl's something special. Lost her parents in a car accident 5 years ago, but instead of feeling sorry for herself, she came back here and started helping everyone else. Runs this place on a shoestring budget, works part-time at the bakery to pay her own bills, still finds time to tutor kids and visit seniors." Damien glanced at Luna again. She was now sitting with an elderly woman, patiently listening to what appeared to be the same story for the 3rd time. "Doesn't she want more?" Damien asked. "She's got job offers from the city every few months. Social work agencies, nonprofits with real funding, always turns them down. Says this is where she belongs." The concept was foreign to Damien. In his experience, everyone wanted to climb higher, earn more, escape their circumstances. Yet here was someone who'd chosen service over success, community over profit. As the afternoon wore on, Damien watched Luna work. She never asked for recognition, never complained about the long hours or meager resources. When a delivery truck brought supplies, she insisted the driver stay for coffee. When children grew restless, she organized games. When arguments broke out over the television channel, she mediated with patience and humor. For the first time in years, Damien felt something he couldn't quantify or purchase: a sense of peace. That had nothing to do with stock portfolios or profit margins. The storm was beginning to clear, but something inside Damien wasn't ready to leave. Walls began to crack. 3 weeks had passed since the storm, yet Damien found himself driving the 2-hour route to Millbrook every few days. He told himself it was research understanding small-town dynamics for potential market expansion. Truth was more complicated. Back again? Luna smiled as he entered the community center on a Tuesday afternoon. She'd started keeping a coffee cup ready, somehow knowing exactly how he liked it black. No sugar. Market research, Damien replied, the lie tasting stale in his mouth. Luna raised an eyebrow but didn't challenge him. Well, if you're studying our market, you should meet some of our residents. Mrs. Patterson is teaching origami to the kids today. Before he could protest, Damien found himself sitting at a small table, fumbling with colorful paper while 8-year-old Jenny patiently showed him how to fold a crane. Her small fingers moved with practiced precision, while his expensive manicured hands struggled with the simple task. "You're doing it wrong, Jenny," said matter-of-factly. "The corner goes this way." See, in boardrooms, Damien commanded respect through fear and authority. Here, he was being corrected by a child who saw nothing but a man who needed help. The experience was oddly liberating. "There," Jenny beamed as his lopsided crane finally took shape. "Now, make a wish." A wish. That's what cranes are for. Grandma says if you fold 1,000 cranes, your wish comes true. Damien looked at the imperfect paper bird in his palm. When was the last time he'd made a wish that wasn't about money or power? "What do you wish for?" he asked Jenny. "For Mommy. To find a job so we don't have to move away," she said simply, returning to her own creation. Later, as Damien helped Luna clean up, he found himself asking about Jenny's situation. "Single mother, laid off from the factory 3 months ago," Luna explained, stacking chairs. "She's been applying everywhere, but opportunities are limited here. Might have to move to the city where her sister lives. Why doesn't she just move? Better job market, more opportunities." Luna paused in her work. "Not everyone measures success the same way, Damien. Jenny's roots are here. Her mother grew up here, met Jenny's father here. Some things matter more than career advancement." That evening, Damien made a phone call to his HR department. Within a week, Jenny's mother had a job offer from one of his subsidiary companies' remote work that would let her stay in Millbrook. When Luna found out, she confronted him after the community center closed. "You didn't do market research, did you?" she asked, arms crossed. Damien shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know what you mean. Jenny's mom got a job offer from Crosstech Industries. A funny coincidence." Caught Damien looked away. "Maybe I made a few calls." "Why?" The simple question hung in the air. Why had he helped a stranger? Why did he keep returning to this small town? Why did Luna's opinion matter to him? "She's a good worker," he said finally. It made business sense. Luna studied his face with those perceptive brown eyes. "You know, it's okay to admit you care about people." "I don't. Last week you spent 2 hours helping Marcus repair the playground equipment. Yesterday you brought new books for the reading program. Today you folded origami cranes with children. Either you're the most dedicated market researcher in history, or you're not as heartless as you pretend to be." Damien felt exposed, vulnerable in a way he hadn't experienced since childhood. Every instinct told him to leave, to return to his safe, predictable world where emotions were weaknesses to exploit. Instead, he found himself saying, "My parents divorced when I was 16. Very public, very ugly. My mother used me as a weapon against my father, and he did the same. I learned early that love was just another word for leverage." Luna's expression softened. "I'm sorry that happened to you." "Don't be. It taught me valuable lessons about human nature." "Like what?" "That everyone wants something. Everyone has a price. Everyone leaves eventually." Luna was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "My parents died when I was 23. Car accident. On their way to my college graduation, I was angry for a long time at them for leaving, at God for taking them, at myself for not saying I love you enough." "How did you get past it?" "I realized that love isn't about guarantees or forever. It's about choosing to care even when it hurts. Even when you might lose everything." She looked directly at him. "The people here don't love each other because it's safe. They love because it's right." That night, Damien lay in his hotel room staring at the ceiling. For 32 years, he'd built walls to protect himself from pain. But somewhere in a small-town community center, Surrounded by origami cranes and children's laughter, those walls were beginning to crack. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts, hundreds of names, all representing business relationships or casual encounters. Then he thought about Luna, who knew his favorite coffee, challenged his assumptions, and somehow made him want to be better than he was. For the first time in his adult life, Damian Cross was afraid not of losing money or power, but of losing something far more precious, the chance to become the man Luna already seemed to see in him. The truth unveiled. Damian's secret unraveled on a Thursday morning when Luna walked into the community center holding a newspaper, her face pale with shock. Crosstech Industries announces major acquisition, the headline read, accompanied by a photo of Damian in his signature tailored suit, shaking hands with board members. Below it, a smaller article detailed his company's plan to acquire Millbrook, manufacturing, the town's largest employer and economic backbone. Damian Cross, CEO of Crosstech Industries, Luna read aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. Known for aggressive business tactics and hostile takeovers, Damian had arrived early to help set up for the senior citizens breakfast program, but now he stood frozen in the doorway. The newspaper trembled in Luna's hands as she looked up at him. "Market research," she said, her voice hollow. "Is that what you call it when you're planning to destroy a town, Luna? I can explain, can you?" Her eyes flashed with hurt and anger. "Were you laughing at us this whole time? The simple small-town people who were so easy to fool?" "It's not like that." Damian stepped forward, but Luna backed away. "Then what is it like?" "Because according to this article, Millbrook Manufacturing is going to be streamlined and relocated to reduce operational costs. That means 800 people lose their jobs." "Damian, 800 families." The weight of her words hit him like a physical blow. Boardroom presentations, those numbers had been statistics. Now they had faces. Frank, the retired mechanic whose son worked at the plant. Mrs. Chen, whose diner would close without the factory workers, Jenny's neighbors, who'd helped her mother through tough times. "I need to think," Damian said quietly. "You need to think." Luna's voice cracked. "These people welcomed you. They trusted you. Mrs. Patterson taught you origami. Jenny made you friendship bracelets. In all this time, you were planning to destroy their lives." Before Damian could respond, the morning crowd began arriving. Senior citizens who'd grown used to his presence greeted him warmly, unaware of the tension in the room. Frank clapped him on the shoulder, mentioning how proud he was that his son might finally get promoted to floor supervisor. Each friendly gesture felt like a knife twisting in Damian's chest. Luna worked mechanically through the breakfast service, avoiding his eyes. When the last senior had been served, she finally spoke. "I want you to leave. Luna, please, no." Her voice was steady now, controlled. "Bye. I don't know what game you're playing, but these people don't deserve to be your entertainment. They deserve better than someone who sees them as obstacles, too." Profit. Damian drove back to the city in silence, his mind racing. The acquisition had been in development for months. Contracts signed, investors committed, board approval secured. Backing out would cost him personally over $200 million and damage his reputation as a decisive leader. But as he sat in his sterile penthouse that evening, surrounded by expensive art and designer furniture, all he could think about was Luna's face when she'd realized who he really was. His phone buzzed with messages from his legal team, investors, and board members. The Millbrook deal was set to close in 72 hours. Everything was proceeding perfectly according to plan, except Damian no longer wanted this particular victory. He spent the night walking through his apartment, remembering fragments of conversations from Millbrook. Jenny's wish for her mother to find steady work. Frank's pride in his son's potential promotion. Mrs. Patterson's story about starting her origami classes after her husband died, finding purpose in teaching children at dawn. Damian made a decision that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. He called an emergency board meeting. "You want to what?" Marcus, his CFO, stared at him in disbelief. "Canceled the Millbrook acquisition." Damien, we've invested millions in due diligence alone. Find another way to meet our expansion goals, Damien said firmly. Cancel Millbrook. Investors will revolt, another board member protested. Your credibility will survive. Damien cut him off. We're not proceeding with the acquisition. The room erupted in arguments about fiduciary responsibility, shareholder value, and market expectations. Damien listened to the familiar language of profit margins and risk assessment, words that had once been his religion. Now they sounded hollow. Love without a price tag. The drive to Millbrook felt like the longest 2 hours of Damien's life. News of Crosstech's decision to abandon the acquisition had broken that morning, sending shockwaves through the business world and his own companies. Stock price. His phone buzzed constantly with calls from reporters, investors, and board members demanding explanations he wasn't ready to give. The community center was busier than usual when he arrived. Word had spread quickly through the small town that their jobs were safe, and an impromptu celebration was underway. Families gathered around tables laden with homemade food. Children ran between the adults, and someone had brought a guitar for an informal sing-along. Damien stood in the doorway, watching the joy on faces he'd come to know, Frank beaming as his son called to share the good news. Mrs. Chen wiping happy tears as neighbors thanked her for the donated food. Jenny skipping between tables, her origami crane necklace bouncing. With each step, Luna spotted him first. The celebration continued around them, but something in her expression made the room feel suddenly quiet. She walked over slowly, her face unreadable. I heard the news, she said simply. Luna, I walk with me. She headed toward the back door that led to the small garden behind the building outside. Evening was settling over Millbrook with the gentle quiet that only small towns knew. Luna sat on a weathered bench beneath an old oak tree, and after a moment's hesitation, Damien joined her. 200 million? Luna said quietly. Damien looked at her in surprise. How did you... I looked up the projected value of the acquisition. That's what you walked away from, isn't it? He nodded, not trusting his voice. Why? The question he'd been asking himself for days. Damien watched a family of sparrows building a nest in the oak's branches, their simple purpose so clear and uncomplicated. Because I met an 8-year-old who taught me to fold paper cranes, he said finally. Because I learned that some wishes are worth more than money. Because a woman in a small town showed me that love isn't about taking, even when it costs you everything. Luna was quiet for a long moment. You lied to me? Yes. You let me believe you were someone you weren't. Yes. You came here planning to hurt people I care about. Yes. Damien turned to face her. But somewhere between the origami lessons and helping fix playground equipment, something changed. You changed me, Luna. This place changed me. People don't change that easily, Damien. Not really. You're right, he admitted. For 32 years, I believed that everyone had a price, that love was weakness, that protecting yourself was the only thing that mattered. One crisis, one betrayal, and I could probably slip right back into those old patterns. Luna frowned. Then why? Because I don't want to, Damien said, his voice stronger now. The first time in my life I met someone who saw potential in me that I didn't even know existed. You never asked me for anything, never tried to change me, never made me feel like I had to earn your friendship. You just believed I could be better. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small paper crane, the lopsided one Jenny had helped him make weeks ago. I've been carrying this around, he said, handing it to Luna. Kept thinking about the wish I made. Took me a while to figure out what it was. Luna turned the paper bird over in her hands. What did you wish for? To become the kind of man who deserved to know you. Tears gathered in Luna's eyes. Damien... I know I don't deserve forgiveness, he continued. I know trust has to be earned, and I know I've got a long way to go before I become the person you believed I could be, but I want to try. Not for business reasons, not for image management for me, because you showed me what love actually looks like. Luna was quiet for so long that Damien began to think he'd lost her forever. Finally, she spoke. Love isn't a feeling, you know. It's a choice. Every day you have to choose to put someone else's well-being before your own comfort. You have to choose vulnerability over safety, truth over convenience, service over self-interest. I'm learning that, are you? Luna studied his face, because I need you to understand something. If we do this, whatever this is, I'm not going to change who I am. I'm not moving to your penthouse, or joining your social circle, or becoming some billionaire's trophy girlfriend. My life is here with these people, doing this work, I know. And you're not going to swoop in and save us with your money. We don't need saving, we need partnership. Respect. Someone who shows up not because he feels guilty or wants to fix things, because this community matters to him. Damien felt something shift inside him, like a door opening to let in light. He'd forgotten existed. What if I showed up because you mattered to me? Because every day I spend away from here feels like I'm forgetting who I want to be. Luna smiled then, the first real smile she'd given him since discovering his identity. Then I'd say you're finally starting to understand what love without a price tag looks like. As they sat beneath the oak tree, watching the stars appear one by one over Millbrook, Damien realized that he'd spent his entire adult life trying to buy happiness, security, and meaning. Now, sitting next to a woman who earned less in a year than he spent on watches, he felt richer than he ever had in his climate-controlled penthouse. Inside the community center, the celebration continued. Tomorrow, he'd face angry investors and a suspicious media. He'd have to figure out how to balance his business responsibilities with his commitment to this place and these people. But tonight, Luna reached over and took his hand, and Damien Cross, billionaire, CEO, man who thought he'd learned everything there was to know about human nature, discovered that the most valuable things in life couldn't be acquired, only received as gifts from people brave enough to love without guarantee. The paper crane in Luna's other hand caught the moonlight. A small reminder that some wishes, when made with an open heart, had the power to change everything.